If there's anything you're going to have to get on top of, it's stress and the effects that it has on you physically, mentally, and emotionally. Now, you don't need me to tell you that there are more demands on us than ever, and we've often come up short when it comes to getting everything done that we would like to get done. You only have to think about doing well at work to start stressing about the extra hours that it takes from your parenting, your relationships, your diet and your nutrition, just your me time. So what most people don't understand is that we've been warmed up like that frog in the boiling water story. Over 20 or 30 years, we've adjusted to expecting more from everything. We aim at a unique relationship in which our partner is always romantic, totally devoted, completely considerate, ultra understanding, fully emotionally developed, and constantly surprising and delighting us with unusual treats, kind and loving words, thoughtful and considerate presence, and always appropriate sexual encounters. And we take parenting to exactly the same level. Nothing but our best is anywhere near satisfactory. And the same pressure to get it right shows up at work. And the need to produce more, to do it better, and to do it faster than ever is constant, and it's growing. And of course, if you know you need to lose 10 kilos to get back into those jeans you've kept in the cupboard for the last 5 years, that just adds another stressful, confidence-sucking addition to the unmanageable list that becomes each day's targets. But it's not just wanting more from everything that we do. The world around us demands constant attention if we're not going to get left behind like a shag on a rock as well. So we need to be constantly updating our skills, our attitudes, our methods, and our thinking just to stay level. And nowadays, you need to keep your Facebook posts timely and relevant so that no one thinks that you're failing to progress easily and glamorously through life. At the same time, you need to know how to get your banking and your bill paying done while you're on the bus or at the gym or going to work, or update your phone to the latest operating system, educate yourself on what your superannuation scheme is doing or not doing, read up on the latest parenting techniques, organise a delicious and nutritious meal the entire family will eat, figure out the shit from clay when it comes to fat versus sugar versus carbohydrates, educate yourself about investment strategies that you might or might not use. The list of new, never seen by the generation before you concepts that you need to master is actually endless, and of course, highly stress-inducing. If we're going to have a win at this level, we need to tackle the situation understanding a couple of pretty important concepts. The first is that most people fail to recognise the enormous amount of stress that they're under in the first place. Like I said, we've mostly been conditioned to keep up with changes like phones that can do more than they used to, because much of the change we're forced to undergo actually looks attractive. For example, hey, look at this app, it gets updated in real time and tells us what's going on in the traffic up ahead of us. Now, it looks and sounds good and it might save some time, but it also requires another level of mental attention to what used to be a pleasant drive in the country. When I was a kid, a Sunday drive was originally a leisure activity undertaken because it was an exploratory, relaxing cruise into the unexplored or the unknown. And many a stress-busting road trip was just that, a simple pleasure that involved long and relaxed conversations, an exotic if unpredictable hamburger, and a sense of time standing still. And step one in nailing stress is to understand that it takes time to unwind. So write this down. If you don't allocate time for unwinding, you automatically let the spring in your heart just wind up tighter and tighter. So tell me how you'd go with this. Mary and I love road trips for the reasons I just mentioned. Recently, we had to get from our farm near Canberra to our other home on the Gold Coast. Now that's 90 minutes on a plane and about 13 hours in a car. So we drove. Why? Well, because we both recognised that the current pace of life meant that our relationship was in need of some TLC. Not repair, not fixing, not mending, just some TLC in the form of time together without an agenda, without a purpose, without a problem that needed solving. You know what I mean. So off we pedalled at a pace that's reflecting that I no longer think that I'm Lewis Hamilton. Automatically, that makes Mary more fun to be with. So we go a few hours and on the spur of the moment decide to stop in a cute little village. Why? Well, to lengthen the trip. We have dinner and a glass of wine, stay overnight in an old-fashioned motel where they stick your breakfast in through that little door thingy, and we automatically become better people to be with. Of course, we had one of those rare, delightful 9-hour rambling chats that's characterised by long periods of silence while we're actually digesting each other's thoughts and feelings. It was a totally uplifting experience, but of course most people wouldn't do it for 1,000 reasons that have to do with not making the time, needing to get shit done, kids tearing the house apart, the boss getting cranky, blah, 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 blah. So just in case you missed it or you think it's a bit basic, step one in reducing stress is taking time out, whether you think you've got that time or not. Let me share with you an experience from my coaching just in the last week. My client Fred rings up to get some help handling his sister. Their father is in his last 4 or 5 days on the planet, and she's raising hell, swearing and shouting at the mum and my client, telling them that they're all stupid, that they're hopeless losers who need to wake up and start planning the funeral, that they're a waste of space, and only she knows what's going on because she's a trained chemist and she understands the drugs that are being given to the father. You get the story. Basically, she rushes in after work to start all this bullying. What she doesn't get is that there are only the hours left in her dad's life, but she still has to go to work, for somehow it's important. And she can't or she won't make the time to sit with her dad and grab the precious few hours that are left. That's what I mean by we have to make the time. The excuses will be meaningless when you're trying to explain to our angry child why we didn't turn up for their soccer game or their award ceremony. Step 2 is to figure out what to do when you allocate that time to unwind and just be. So let me explain a difficult concept. You started out as a human being. You've ended up becoming a human doing. You'll need to find the thing that fuels your soul when you do it. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering or bring peace to the world in general. It just has to work for you. So, for example, many people get off on gardening. Obviously, a long walk on a lonely beach would be a great thing, or staring into a fire for an evening. Perhaps a holiday would do it, or maybe a fishing trip would do the trick. Maybe sitting in a forest would work. For most of us, those things would be great, but they're also impractical because they chew up massive amounts of time. Therefore, practically speaking, the only option is lots of small, de-stressing activities during every day. It's ridiculously simple, really. If a day out on your boat does it for you, closing your eyes for a few minutes and imagining that you're on that boat will give you 80% of the benefit without getting covered in salt and sweat and sunscreen. And not only will you not need a shower, you're going to save money on petrol. Alternatively, you can pretend you were sitting in your garden, walking in that forest, playing with your kids when they were 3 years old, catching a wave at a cool beach, flying your hang glider over magnificent scenery. Really, the list is endless. But we just don't think to force fit it. So here's your assignment, should you choose to accept it. Work 55 minutes. Go hard during that time and do your best. Focus and go for it. Then take that 5 minutes, that last 5 minutes out of the hour and disappear into what I call the real world, the world that you create for the purpose of nurturing you and your spirit. It's pretty easy, really. Just set the timer on your phone and log out, unplug and tune in. You'll feel different from the very first time you do that. Now, there's a problem with all this free rein I'm giving you, though. Too much choice gives most people the excuse to never get started. And I hear it pretty often, oh, I tried meditation once and it didn't work. Well, I don't know if I should take on bonsai or yoga. And what those people needed was not an answer about which thing would be best. What they actually needed to do was commit to a system, to try something on for a size for a while. And you probably need that too. The truth is that many of us mean to get around to meditating or praying or yoga or tai chi or painting or singing or dancing, but we never generate any momentum because those things crop up that need to be dealt with, so we skip our me time to handle the problems. And I was in that category some years ago myself, and I recognised that my well-meaning intentions were producing zero results. So I booked myself into art classes on Tuesday afternoons, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. In fact, the trick is to book and pay ahead of time, although there isn't a 100% guarantee that money is going to make you go. Anyway, I could have gone on a Saturday afternoon if I wanted to, but I chose a midweek option because it forced me to get out of the workplace and use the art classes to clean my mind of the endless chatter and the crap that work entailed. It was during the art classes, by the way, the classes did not produce another Picasso. It was during those classes that I had my best, my most productive and my most time-saving ideas. That 3 hours became an investment, not a cost. I was such a better person to be around that everyone at work would run around on Tuesdays making sure that I got out the door. It was like they knew that I was going to see my therapist and they couldn't afford for me to miss a session. So really it comes down to your ability to say no regularly. No to staying up late. No to eating food that comes in packets. No to too much alcohol. No to working stupid hours. No to skipping trips to the gym. These no's are not easy. They're just imperative and vital, that's all. When we say no enough, we're actually self-parenting. We're saying to ourselves that we acknowledge that one more beer or chocolate or episode of NCIS is what we want, but is not what we need. What's more important is we need that extra bit that doesn't meet the eye. So try this on for size. What commitments can you undo or unravel or get out of? What responsibilities can you step away from? What jobs can you outsource? What roles can you relinquish to somebody else? And set yourself the goal to reduce your commitments and responsibilities by 20%. That should get you 20% of your time back. Now, if you're figuring that's the equivalent of a day a week, well, what would you do with that day? Well, most people will fill it up with extra new stuff that's exciting and looks good, and which is guaranteed to snaffle up that one day a week that we just created like a typhoon snatches houses. When you make that extra time in your day, ask yourself what kind of activity would make my heart sing and run with that. Step 3 in stress reduction might shock you. Maybe you need to find work that is better for you. Maybe work as you know it now isn't just going to get better by itself. And as the workforce realigns itself because of the fourth industrial revolution sweeping the world at the moment, maybe this decision is going to be forced upon you sooner than you expect. You could even do what my client Jane did and fulfill a lifelong dream to retrain and become a school teacher at age 53. It wasn't easy for her. The course was 18 months long with no part-time option, so she had to figure out how to pay her regular bills and her class fees without an income. So yes, you might have to work for a while to save enough to start a side hustle even, or get a job working as a builder's labourer so you can figure out how to be a property developer, or start an Amazon store. I don't know what would suit you, but I do know this: work that is not uplifting and inspiring will kill you. If that's not stress, then I actually don't know what is. So give yourself a deadline like 5 or 6 years to develop something that could be your future source of income. You don't have to pull it all off tomorrow. But here's something profound and deep. Once you set that deadline, everything else becomes more tolerable because you know it's not going to last forever. It's a secret most people don't know. Step 4 in stress reduction comes out of left field. You need to train your brain. Let me illustrate with a story. A young Native American boy asks a chief for some advice. He says, "There are 2 wolves inside of me. The problem is one wolf is brave, nurturing, self-assured and compassionate. The other is mean and nasty and lazy and self-centered." And the chief acknowledges the boy's recognition of our dark and our light sides and asks the boy, "What is your question?" And the boy says, "The fight between the 2 wolves. Who wins?" And the chief takes a big breath and says, "It depends which one you feed." And most of us Westerners feed the wrong wolf, inadvertently, and then we complain about its behaviour. The fact is we have to go out of our way to train our brains to do what we ask of them because it's not mentioned in our schooling. Now, it's not difficult. We just have to learn about letting some thoughts go by, by not paying attention to them. We may even have to actively dismiss them. So as an illustration, many parents have thought, "I'm going to kill that kid." Yet this very same parent dismisses the idea as soon as it emerges. And that's what I mean by letting some thoughts just go. Hanging on to them only makes you wonder what's wrong with you. The other component in brain training is forcing the mind to pay attention to what you told it to focus on. It's deceptively simple, really. All we have to do is notice the thoughts wandering and, without scolding ourselves, herd the mind like a shepherd back into the correct paddock, or in this case, onto the right subject. This gentle but insistent cajoling of the intellect to do your bidding pays enormous dividends. Yes, of course it takes practice, and most of us tire too easily and give up. But if there was a chip we could have installed into our brain to achieve that, we'd probably pay thousands for it. Step 5 in stress reduction won't be news to you. You absolutely have to perfect a proactive stress reduction process such as meditation or mindfulness as a matter of urgency. Don't bother telling me how hard it is to fit this concept into your everyday life. I had to go through the same thing myself, and I'm familiar with the old "I just haven't got time" thing. The truth boils down to this: if you aren't prepared to get up early enough to fit your yoga or meditation or mindfulness in before the day starts, you're just not fair income. Seriously, we know stress kills. We know that 80% of all hospitalisations are due to a stress-related condition. We know we need to create this inner pool of peacefulness in order to deal with the world, but we just complain about being too busy. So I'm going to be the coach that you want me to be and call bullshit on the whole story. It's simple, really. Go to bed early enough to get a great sleep and get up correspondingly early enough to give yourself a dose of what you need most in life. Anything less than that is simply telling yourself that you're not worth it. The next time you get the urge to sit up and watch some garbage on TV, remind your ego that it isn't running the show and cart yourself off to bed for a deep, restful sleep, the one that comes before midnight. The maths are too simple for words. Be in bed at 9:30. That means you can be awake at 5:30 and still have had 8 hours sleep. So now what you do in that 90 minutes between 5:30 and 7 a.m. is going to turn your life on its head. If it included some meditating, some exercise, or some inspirational reading, you wouldn't know yourself and stress would be completely optional. So step 5 is actually step 1. So hop to it. There's no time to waste. You have to be in bed sooner than you think.